Starcom Racing is expected to shut down at the end of the 2021 season. Bubba Wallace will have a new crew chief starting this weekend at Bristol, and there might be heat races taking place for the invitational event at the LA Clash. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go just jump straight into those very, very quickly. We're going to start off with Kyle Larson's 2021 Tarleton scheme that we're going to see next weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I think they did a pretty solid job on this paint scheme, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, it's very, very simplistic, but one of my favorite things about this paint scheme is you got the matte black finish on it, which I think makes it look shine, and it looks really, really good. I think a lot of the matte black on a lot of cars, especially, they look really, really good. So they did a very good job on it. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this car at Vegas. I really like this paint scheme overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Road America Cup race. And they have their title sponsor hasn't officially been revealed for 2022. It's going to be called the Quick Trip 250 presented by Jockey. So what they're doing is they're basically swapping the two sponsors. So last year, actually this year, for the event, they had the Jockey 250 presented by Quick Trip. What they're doing this year is they're calling it the Quick Trip 250 presented by Jockey. So it's really cool to see if Quick Trip is stepping up to the plate. It's not like the major Quick Trip, but it's a major sponsor up in, I think up in Wisconsin. So I think it's really cool that they're bringing that back. I really like that overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Food City. As it was reported by Bob Parker, that Food City has sent its Spring Cup and Fall Xfinity Series race sponsorships with Bristol as part of a multi-year deal. Food City has sponsored the Bristol I think since around 2003 or 2004. They've had a long-time sponsorship with the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. And it's good to see that Food City, which is a major chain out in the Tennessee area, major chain. Really good to see that Food City is going to continue sponsoring and continue branding Bristol Motor Speedway. And again, I don't know how long the deal is. It's probably at least a 3 or 4 year extension. Great to see that. Happy that Food City continues to be a brand. Again, it's a major company out in Tennessee. So it's really awesome to see that Food City is going to continue branding and sponsoring here in 2022. Great to see they're going to continue sponsoring and branding overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Peter Suspenso. As Peter Suspenso is going to be crew chief for Justin Haley this weekend at Bristol. Now, the reason Peter Suspenso is going to be crew chief for Justin Haley in the Cup Series race at Bristol is because Kevin Bellecourt, due to 2 Londons being loose at Richmond this past Saturday, Kevin Bellecourt will not be crew chiefing this weekend. That means Peter Suspenso, who's been working, I think, in the back marker part, or the back side of the team, who's basically working on the competition side of things for Spire Motorsports, he's jumping up and crew chiefing. Now, Peter Suspenso, I believe, was the crew chief for Justin Haley when he won the 2019 race at Daytona for his first Cup race. And he really didn't have to do anything in that event. Kind of got lucky overall to win that event. But still, Peter Suspenso was behind the wheel and behind the crew chief portion of that team. So it's great to see Peter Suspenso is going to be working with. I'm really happy about that overall for sure. And I hope Peter Suspenso can give Justin Haley a really good run. I think Kevin Bellecourt is a very solid crew chief, but I think Peter Suspenso could be a really big benefactor of Justin Haley this weekend. I'm looking forward to see what he's going to do, and hopefully he will help Justin Haley have a very strong run this weekend here at Bristol. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Blake Cook. And it was reported by TobyChristie.com that Filter Time and Blake Cook have been listed on the Forbes Next 1000 list for small businesses. This is really cool to see the NASCAR reputation is being represented here. FilterTime.com is for like filters and like air conditioners and all that stuff. So it's really cool to see that Filter Time is getting that recognition and is getting that branding. The fact that they're in the Next 1000, it's like Blake Cook was a very solid NASCAR driver, and he wants to at some point come back to NASCAR or something. He's tweeted that out recently. But Blake Cook has had a very successful company that's been on the way up. Dale Jr. also represents that company as well as one of the ambassadors for that company as well. So it's great to see that Blake Cook is getting on that. It's really awesome to see, and I'm happy that he's going to be on the Forbes 1000. I'm really happy overall for Blake Cook on that front for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Nutrien AG. As it was reported by Jenna Fryer, that Nutrien AG is going to be dropping their sponsorship for Starcom Racing after the 2021 season, and this could have some implications in regards to their lineup going into 2022. Now, Nutrien AG has been sponsoring Starcom Racing since 2019, when they started sponsoring drivers like Arash Yassin, when he ran some select starts for the organization back in 2019. And now it looks like they may be dropping to maybe to a 2-car operation going into 2022, with Nutrien AG basically dropping their sponsorship. This is really surprising considering Nutrien AG has been sponsoring for the team, but I think one of the reasons that they're probably no longer sponsoring them is because Ross Chastain is probably not part of that organization, has not been part of the organization for the last year. And I think Jet Bird's been a solid driver, but he's not been as good as Ross Chastain was last year. Yes, he actually won a race, unlike Ross Chastain, but Ross Chastain was a lot more consistent. So it is unfortunate to see that they're going to be dropping their sponsorship going into the 2022 season, and it may have implications in regards to who goes there. The question is right now, what's the lineup going to be for Collard Racing at this moment besides AJ Allmendinger? It's really unknown, but if they don't have the Nutrien AG sponsorship, that might mean Matty D may not have a ride going into next year, and that's a big question for Matt DiBenedetto if Collard does not open up for him. He may not go there. We don't know what's going on with him next year, but it's unfortunate Nutrien AG is going to be dropping their sponsorship in the year. It's really unfortunate overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode. As we're talking about Worldwide Technology Raceway, it was reported by Adam Stern that Worldwide Technology Raceway has already received 5,000 ticket deposits for next year's Cup Series race in the first 24 hours it was available. The track has got a 3-year deal, and owner Curtis Francois said he's expecting a sellout of the 57,000 seat venue. I can personally confirm that me, my dad, and my brother are 3 of those people that have already brought ticket deposits. But the fact that only in the first 24 hours, the fact that the track has pretty much already sold 5,000 ticket deposits is really, really incredible. And again, like I said, I am already going out to Worldwide Technology Raceway, and I think a lot of the excitement is for the fact that we have a new track on the Cup Series schedule. It's a major, major market in the St. Louis area, and I'm definitely telling you right now, I will say this, I guarantee you that the event will sell out. There's a lot of people that I probably will think will go to that event, even that are not NASCAR fans, that are probably going to go to the race because it's big for the St. Louis area. It's gotten huge recognition in the St. Louis area. You've had major outlets like KTVL and KSCK, which are 2 of the biggest outlets in the St. Louis area that have been reporting on this. So I think this is going to be big for the city overall. And the fact that already 5,000 tickets have been sold for the event is really, really awesome. And like I said, I'm going to be out at Worldwide Technology Raceway in June. We're going to be out there. So I'm really excited about going out there overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Iowa Speedway. As Bob Pockers had responded to a fan asking about what's the plans for Iowa Speedway and if they are going to be on the NASCAR schedule, and he basically said that he's not expecting this track to be on the NASCAR schedule in 2022. Now, unfortunately, it's really unfortunate that we're probably not going to see any NASCAR racing in general at Iowa Speedway. Now, probably we'll see the ARCA Series be out there, but we're probably not going to be seeing on the trucks, Xfinity, even the Cup schedule in 2022. Already Cup schedule has been confirmed, so it's not on there, and it's not expected to be on the Xfinity or Truck Series schedule. Now, it is going to be on the IndyCar schedule in a doubleheader, which is going to be televised on NBC, but I think that had been really cool if Iowa could have gotten a Cup Series A. I think that could have been big for the track to have a NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader take place if they couldn't have it at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This could have been where they had it at Iowa, but I believe one of the reasons NASCAR is really not working out there anymore at the moment, I think of Penske's Corporation is basically running out the track right now for a couple of years. So it's unfortunate that we're not going to see NASCARs again. I think the racing's been solid, but let's say for real, over the last couple of years that track had been around, attendance had overall in general been declining, so it doesn't 100% surprise me that that is happening overall. There's probably not going to be any racing, but it would have been honestly super cool if we did get racing out of Iowa Speedway. I think it would have been huge. It would have been beneficial, and I think it would have been really, really crucial for the track to have it overall. But it is what it is, and hopefully in the future, we'll go back to Iowa Speedway. Maybe 2023 we get a Cup date there. We'll have to wait and see what happens, though. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Faf Moffitt. As it was reported on the FS1 broadcast, and Jamie Little brought this up, that Faf Moffitt is looking to do some NASCAR Xfinity Series races in 2022. He doesn't know what team he wants to go on, but he wants to take the next step and jump up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I want to say this. I don't think Faf Moffitt is even close to being ready to jump up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Yes, he currently sits 3rd in the points in the ARCA Championship, but the ARCA Series is not competitive. And Faf Moffitt has done a lot of things that have frustrated a lot of fans in that series, including myself, including the beefs that he has had with Drew Dollar. Personally, I'm not a fan of Faf Moffitt. I think that he will, if he goes up to Xfinity next year, if he goes to Team Penske, he's going to absolutely suck. Yeah, a lot of people say, well, he's a grandson of Richard Petty, so he should absolutely get it right. But he's going to have the talent to back it up. And he's been driving a DGR truck, this DGR Xfinity Series, not DGR ARCA car this year, and he's not performed. He's not performing up to the standards you expect a driver to perform at his caliber, and he's not going up against guys like Ty Gibbs. He's not as good as Ty Gibbs. He's not even as good as the guy we're going to talk about in a second. So I don't understand why he's considering jumping up to Xfinity. I think another year in ARCA would have made a lot of sense for him. Maybe he'll do better next year in ARCA. Maybe he could surprisingly run well because sometimes people don't do as good in other respective series. But to me, I don't think that he is ready to jump up to Xfinity. I think he's going to really, really struggle. He's had a lot of issues here, not to mention his beef with Drew Dollar has not been really good. And I just think it's really frustrating that a guy like Faf Moffitt, who has not really earned an opportunity to jump up to Xfinity, is considering jumping up. I think he will struggle. Now, again, it's not confirmed he's going to jump up or not. It's just a theory that he may jump up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year, which I think he's going to struggle if he goes to Xfinity. He could be like the Riley Herbst of the NASCAR Xfinity Series right now, which Riley Herbst is not that good. He's improving. So, Faf Moffitt looking to ground Xfinity. I'm not a fan of that overall, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Sammy Smith. As Sammy Smith last night at Bristol, after finishing second to Ty Gibbs in the main ARCA race, you also had the ARCA East Championship going on at the same time, and he was able to cross the line second, and he won the 2021 ARCA East Championship. Now, this year, Sammy Smith scored 3 wins in the ARCA East Championship. Remember, there's only 8 races in the ARCA East schedule this year, a lot less due to, I think, COVID-19 was one of the big reasons why there was less on the schedule this year. But Sammy Smith has had a pretty solid year, of course, driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. 3 out of 8 wins. Pretty solid year, in my opinion. It's not like Ty Gibbs in ARCA has won 10 races out of like 18 events, which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way, how much he's dominated that. But Sammy Smith's also expected to run full-time for, I believe he's going to be running full-time for that team in 2022 in the 18 team. And I think he's absolutely ready. I think Sammy Smith has a lot of talent. He's proved it in the late models. And driving in the ARCA East Series, he's done extremely well this year. And in my opinion, has earned an opportunity and has earned a right to officially go full-time in ARCA next year. And I'll tell you right now, I think that he will be a championship contender next year. Of course, Joe Gibbs Racing is the best team, but you have to have the talent to back it up. And the fact that he finished second to a really good driver like Ty Gibbs, I think that is really good for a driver like Sammy Smith. And I'm really excited to see what he's going to do next year in ARCA. But huge congratulations to Sammy Smith for officially going to ARCA full-time next year. Congratulations on winning the 2021 ARCA East Championship. He deserved it, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Xfinity Series and Truck Series schedule. Now, it was reported by Bob Pockets, I believe it was on Wednesday or Thursday morning, that he mentioned that the Xfinity Series and Truck Series schedule should be announced in the coming weeks. Now, he also reported that it's already expected that Circuit of the Americas is going to have a triple header once again in 2022. Don't be surprised if the Xfinity Series and Truck Series schedules look a little bit similar to what the Cup Series schedules are going to look like. Now, there might be some tracks that might not be added. It's unclear what's going on with Gateway at the moment. I think it'd be cool if Gateway was to have a triple header for the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series on their first official Cup weekend happening. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, I only right now expect the Truck Series and the Cup Series to have events. I think, like I said, I think it'd be really cool if they could get both series to run at the same time, all 3 series respective on the weekend. I think it'd be big for the series overall. But I think that you're only going to see trucks run since trucks have run Gateway for the last couple years. I would not be shocked if that's the only series that ends up running there. But I'll tell you right now, I'm definitely intrigued to see what the Xfinity Series and Truck Series schedule is going to look like. Are they going to go to new tracks next year? Are they going to go to Indianapolis Raceway Park next year? Now, we expect them to go to Indianapolis Motor Speedway next year. But what other tracks are they going to go to next year? It's unclear at the moment. But I'm definitely intrigued to see how many races they have next year. Are they going to decrease the amount of races in each of the series, or are they going to increase? Is Knoxville going to come back next year, or are they only going to run 1 dirt race, and that would be a Bristol Dirt? It's unsure at the moment. Maybe Xfinity runs a Bristol Dirt race. Maybe have a triple header weekend. I don't exactly know, but to me, I think it's really, hopefully, we'll see a very good schedule coming out for the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the NASCAR Truck Series going for 2022, and I think it'll be pretty good next year. I think you're going to see a lot of good races, though, on the 2022 schedule. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was reported by Jenna Fryer that Indianapolis Motor Speedway wants to begin talks of moving NASCAR back to the oval in the future. Now, we already know that we're going to be running the Indianapolis Road Course for the Indy NASCAR doubleheader in 2022. But also, she mentioned that there says the excitement is really good, and the excitement of the novelty of the race on the road course is what they really like. They like the excitement of that. They said, however, it will consider a return to the oval in the future on a rotation between every year, maybe 1 year on the oval and then 1 year on the road course. I think that there is a big contributing factor to what they want. First of all, the TV ratings for the event. The TV ratings were not that great. Let's be perfectly honest with you for the Verizon 200. I thought they'd do a little bit better than I thought they were going to do, and the ratings were They weren't really that great. They were not as good for sure as the race on the Brickyard 400. And NBC is probably having a lot of say, and they're probably wanting it to be the Brickyard 400 on the event. Plus, a lot of drivers have been begging and considering for them to put it back there. There are a lot of drivers, a lot of pretty veteran NASCAR drivers like Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, were not overall the biggest fan of the event happening on the Indianapolis road course. They would have rather had the event happen on the regular Indianapolis Motor Speedway track. Probably wouldn't be surprised in 2023 if we do eventually run the Brickyard 400 again, but they wanted to change it up the last couple years because let's be for real, the racing in Indianapolis Motor Speedway hasn't been great, but you never know. The next-gen car, for all we know, could provide some very solid racing and make Indianapolis a great racetrack once again. But to be perfectly honest with you, I think I'm not surprised. Again, TV is having a big say. Remember that we have that big and massive TV contract that's coming up in a couple years, and that's a big contributing factor why we're seeing all these schedule changes and why we're seeing all these markets, and not to mention the LA Coliseum, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's why we're seeing that on the schedule. But to me, I look at this Indianapolis Motor Speedway move, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens very, very soon. I'm very intrigued to see how this goes going forward, and we might see Indianapolis Motor Speedway get it back on the traditional oval for the doubleheader. I would not be surprised if we continue seeing a doubleheader going forward, but I think that we'll see the race return to the oval going into 2023. That is what I'm expecting overall. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about New York and Chicago. Now, basically, this year on the 2022 schedule, if you notice, there's no street course races on the schedule. Now, Ben Kennedy was speaking to the media and was talking about this, and Bob Pockrass actually reported this, and he says that there might be some potential street races down the road as well. He mentions that the Meadowlands and the Chicago street course are in consideration for the future. What Ben Kennedy said was, it's very preliminary and not sure if anything could happen there. But he also mentioned that the New York market is strong as well, and Chicago is on top of that. You think of the markets like New York and you think of markets Chicago. Two of the biggest markets, I think two of the top three cities in the United States, when it comes to population, they have two of the three biggest cities in the population. It's a major, major market out there. Now, like I said, there have been talks this year of potentially there being a race on the Chicago street course here, but unfortunately, those plans kind of fell through at the end of the season. Unfortunately, never came to fruition at the end, and they just never had time to get it. I mean, we have Lori Lightfoot that has been overall in support of this event happening, but to me, in my honest opinion, I don't overall see this happening, at least 2020. Again, I'm no surprise this doesn't happen in 2022. But in Meadowlands, they have a race up in New York, and the Meadowlands are a very popular area up in that area. And yes, you do have a race at Watkins Glen, which is not too far from the New York area, but you do have that going against it at the same time as well. So I would not be surprised going into 2023 if we do see a street course race happen, especially I think they're waiting a year to see how the next-gen car. I think that's one of the big contributing factors to why we're not seeing a street course race in 2022 is because I think that what NASCAR wants to see is how does the next-gen car run on street courses or road courses in general, because remember, street courses are generally look like road courses, so they want to see how the car races on road course. Remember, you have those bigger brakes, and times are going to be faster, and the brakes are going to be better. So what NASCAR is hoping is that we'll see better racing overall in the product. Overall, it'd be better going forward. So to me, it does not surprise me that we're not seeing any races in those particular areas going into 2022, but maybe going into 2023. And I would not be surprised if they try out those markets there going forward. Because remember, Chicago does not have a racetrack right now. Close track is going to be Gateway at Worldwide Technology Raceway. So you have that going on. And I think it'd be really cool to see this happen going forward. I would like to see that overall for sure, them go up in those markets. I think those markets absolutely deserve to have an opportunity to see how racing is, and I think it'd be cool if we would have racing in those areas in the future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kevin Harvick. Now, Kevin Harvick was speaking to Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, and he was interviewing, I believe it was with Dave Moody and Pete Pistone. He was talking about that he said that he loves the 2022 schedule. However, he says he wants to see the championship rotate every year between 5 or 6 tracks. And he also mentioned he wishes the All-Star race uses short tracks more often. And he said he would like to see more than one off week on the 2022 schedule. First of all, let's talk about the championship race rotate. I absolutely agree. I think that the championship race needs to rotate between 5 or 6 tracks. There really are not a lot of tracks you could go to because of the weather. But Phoenix is one of those tracks. Of course, we're going back to Phoenix in 2022. That was already confirmed a couple months ago. We know we're going back to Phoenix in 2022. But you have some other tracks you could consider and go to. A track like Auto Club is going to be converted into short track probably by 2023. You still have those conversion plans that are expected to happen. Another track that you also have potentially going into 2023, you have, of course, Homestead is going to be back in the playoffs. That's a track that's going to be available. I know people probably think Daytona, but Daytona would be a very, very bad choice. You also have Sonoma that could be available up there. To me, I think that they do need to rotate the championship race. We can't just all year give a track to Phoenix. Phoenix also does not overall produce the best racing. They produce decent racing, but they don't overall produce the best racing. In regards to the All-Star race using short tracks, I absolutely strongly agree. Now, I think we probably should at some point move back to the Charlotte area because remember, they're having the All-Star race now a week before the Coke 600 again. I think we need to move the All-Star race back into that general area. Bowman Gray definitely be a great track. If you're going to have a track in that Charlotte area, you want to keep it in that area, I think Bowman Gray would work. A lot of people are bringing, why don't we run Bowman Gray in winter? Because there's snowstorms potentially, which is why we're running the LA Coliseum and not Bowman Gray. But I think that this could be definitely a good track to try for Bowman Gray. I think Bowman Gray would be definitely a good track, and we should try short tracks there. And in regards to one off week, I'm definitely hit or miss about this one right here. I understand where Kevin Harvick's coming from because the season is long and very, very grueling. But at the same time, NASCAR is looking at the ratings, like I said, especially with that TV contract coming up, and they want to keep the fan focused. And not to mention, there are a ton of races that are going to be on main and going to be on Sunday afternoons. So you want to make sure that you can bring as many fans as possible, and you don't want that happening going forward. So I understand where Kevin Harvick is coming from, but at the same time, I understand that we need to keep racing going, and I think there would be one off week. But I do 100% agree with Kevin Harvick and understand what he's saying, especially for a driver. He did say he likes overall the schedule, and I really like it too. And hopefully, we'll see some great racing in 2022. I do like the schedule overall, though, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the next-gen car. Now, it was reported that the next-gen car is going to run on all races next year. This is going to include the Clash in LA and Bristol Dirt. Now, I want to first talk about the LA Clash running next-gen cars. I'm not a fan of them running the next-gen car. I completely understand that they're trying to hype up the event, but I think especially with the low inventory that the next-gen car is going to probably have, yes, we're probably going to have a lot of next-gen cars already produced and ready to go, but you're not going to have as much inventory in February as NASCAR thinks. And yes, I understand they're trying to get this next-gen car hyped up, but at the same time, I would think it'd be a lot more sense if you just had one race, you would not just use the Gen 6 cars, because you're going to become obsolete anyways. I just think that they could have honestly not used the next-gen cars for this one, and they could have used the old Gen cars. Now, Bristol are having it. There have been talk maybe they could use the Gen 6 cars. I would not be surprised, though, with the next-gen car. I would not be shocked if they don't use a splitter, because remember the Gen 6 cars when they ran Bristol Dirt this past year, they did not use dirt. And like I said, they have been considerations for them to potentially run the, basically run without a splitter, so run the Gen 6 cars. So it doesn't surprise me that they're running, but like I said, going back to the LA Clash, I'm still not a fan of them running the next-gen cars at the LA Clash. I think it would have made a lot more sense to run the old cars to basically save inventory. Like I said, I understand where they're coming from in regards to basically keeping that, but at the same time, I'm not a big fan overall on that front of that. But it's at least cool that we're going to see next-gen car in all races. They're being consistent about it, and it's great to see it. And I'm really excited about the next-gen car at points, but also worry about the next-gen car at points. But we'll see it on short tracks. We expect it to be really, really good on short tracks. So I'm looking forward to that on front. I'm just not overall a fan of the running the next-gen car at the Clash. I think it would have made a lot more sense to run the Gen 6 cars and not run the next-gen cars, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about John Hunter Nemechek. Now, John Hunter Nemechek came across the line, I believe, finishing second or third at Bristol Motor Speedway after a late contact in the event. And he said he was not very happy with Chandler Smith after the event. He says, "I'm pissed right now. Two teammates racing hard, whatever. You get moved out of the way, kind of a cheap shot. It's a company win. It is what it is." John Nemechek was not very happy with the way Chandler Smith raced him at the end of the event. If you watched the Truck Series race last night at the conclusion of that, you had people bringing up the fact that Team Warriors, you had Zane Smith, who was overall not pissed what KBM was doing, but if GMS was, let's be for real, if GMS was in that same position, they would not overall be pissed off. If they were, like I said, they're in the same position, they wouldn't have problems overall right there. But that being said, talking about John Hunter Nemechek, John Nemechek, let's be real for real. Chandler Smith is trying to race his way into the next round of the playoffs, especially since he's below the cutoff line. He has to go out there and win the event. John Nemechek does not have to race as hard because he's already locked into the event. On top of that, I don't really understand why John Hunter Nemechek overall is pissed off at Chandler Smith, and I'll explain why I don't understand why he's mad. I think that he gave Chandler Smith the bottom line and let him pass him and gave him the bottom line on the restart. And yes, Chandler Smith raced Sheldon Creed really, really hard, but Sheldon Creed overall wasn't as pissed off as other drivers were. But at the same time, Chandler Smith's got to do whatever he's got to do to win. I don't think dumping something for the win is really, really cool. But, John, you're already locked into the next round of the playoffs. I know playoff points are extremely important, but at the same time, I just don't understand why John Nemechek was really, really pissed last night. I would have understood if he dumped him and wrecked him. I would not have been a big fan of Chandler Smith right there. But I look at Chandler Smith, the guy's trying to make his way into the next round. I just don't really overall understand why he's overall frustrated about that, in my honest opinion. Again, like I said, I do understand in some ways where he's coming from, but at the same time, I just don't get him being frustrated and being pissed at that particular moment. I think it's a heat of the moment, especially all that adrenaline that's coming out of him. He's just coming off a very strong run at Bristol, and I just don't understand why John Nemechek is frustrated at Chandler Smith. They should overall be happy because both their drivers made the next round of the playoffs, and it's really cool to see that Chandler Smith won last night. I was happy for Chandler Smith. I think Chandler Smith absolutely, in my opinion, overall deserved a victory in that event, and hopefully we'll see Chandler Smith maybe gets 10 more victories. I don't know why John Nemechek's picks. Maybe we'll see these two have tempers going forward starting this next week in Las Vegas. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I don't understand why John Nemechek is overall pissed at Chandler Smith, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about GMS Racing. Now, it was reported by Bob Parker, so he's responded to a fan asking about what's the plan for GMS Racing in the Cup Series, and he says that GMS Racing is still working on whether part-time or full-time, trying to buy or obtain a charter for next year. And they mentioned that Ty Dillon is a name mentioned among those being considered. Now, we talked about this on the channel that I think earlier this week, I think on Monday, I think on Monday or Tuesday, as a matter of fact, that there's still consideration for Ty Dillon being the guy that could be going over to GMS with the team in 2022. Now, we've talked about GMS is expected to jump up to the Cup Series in some sort of capacity in the 2022 season. Again, it's not confirmed if they're going to be full-time or part-time, but I think that there's a chance they could somehow obtain the charter going into 2022. You do have a bunch of charters that could be available. You do have Rick Ware Racing, who is planning to sell at least one or two of their charters, even at least one of their charters, because remember, Rick Ware Racing is expected to downsize to one or two car team going into 2022, so they can focus a little bit more on their IndyCar program going into 2022, and they want to bring their Cup Series program to be a little more competitive going into 2022 as well, which I think makes a lot of sense for downsize of one or two car team. You also have potential that Furrow Motorsports could sell both of their charters, though there's talk right now that Furrow maybe remain a one-car operation next year with Michael McDowell in the car, and then potentially they could be a one-car team and sell the other charter to Kurt Busch. I'll tell you right now, first thing, GMS going jumping up the Cup. I think it's really good to see that another team, a lower tier team, is going to jump up to the Cup Series. There have been talks that maybe they would jump up the Cup as early as I think back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So a team like GMS jumping up the Cup would be really, really cool. Now, Ty Dillon being the first name of a driver, I don't think that Ty Dillon will be my choice personally. Yes, I think Ty Dillon does have some talent, don't get me wrong. But I'll be for real with this one. I think that there are better drivers to start a team off with. Drivers like, I don't know, Ryan Newman, Matt DiBenedetto, Ryan Preece. Three names that I immediately mentioned that I think would get your team off on the right foot. Ryan Preece is a pretty solid driver overall. Ryan Newman, he's kind of fallen off as a driver overall in NASCAR. He's still a driver that could rely on going forward. So I think Ty Dillon being a driver, I like Ty Dillon as a person, but I don't think that Ty Dillon's overall a much better driver. So to me, I just don't understand why Ty Dillon will be up for consideration. Now, I know some people bring up Zane Smith into consideration for the ride, and there's been talk maybe he could be one of the early favorites for that ride. But that being said, I think Zane Smith will be better off going off to a team like Starcom Racing in 2022, in my opinion. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to GMS, and maybe they'll choose Ty Dillon. Who really knows? But interesting that GMS is making this plans, and interesting news overall for sure that we're still talking about Ty Dillon maybe being the driver going to GMS in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about 23XI making some personnel changes starting right now. Now, Mike Wheeler is going to be moved to Director of Competition for 2311 Racing, and Bootie Barker is going to be taken over as the crew chief for Bubba Wallace effective immediately. Steve Valletta continuing quoted that as we finish off the 2021 season, this move allows Wheels to focus on overall vision for 2311 Racing and allows Bootie to help Bubba and the number 23 team finish strong over the final 8 races. Bootie Barker has not crew chief since 2017 when he crew chief for Ty Dillon. I think that Bootie Barker is a very, very solid crew chief to work with. He worked with Scott Warren back in the 2000s, and they almost won a champ. Well, they kind of were getting really on their rings around 2002, and they're working very, very well. On top of that, Bootie Barker knows the ins and outs of the garage, and I think that if you're going to choose somebody that's a free agent who hasn't crew chief in a couple years, who knows how to get it done, I think Bootie Barker has to absolutely be the first choice to go forward. Not to mention, I think a lot of people say, well, Mike Wheeler is not the big problem, and I really disagree in regards to Mike Wheeler. Mike Wheeler is not a good crew chief. I just want to make that really, really clear. He's made a lot of strategy mistakes this year. Bubba Wallace is on the verge of getting a top 5 at 2311 Racing, their first top 5 of the year, potentially at Phoenix, and they made a terrible strategy call at the end of the race. Talladega, they had a potential winning car in that event, and they made a terrible move right there at the end of the race by trying to come down and get tires at the end of the event, which I really didn't understand that. They've had other issues in the past, and they don't agree on the strategy that they've been making this year. So to me, I think that this will overall be beneficial to bring a person like Bootie Barker, who knows in and outs of the crew chief, is kind of an underdog in the crew chief side of things, and who can bring a lot to the table overall. And I think that this will actually help Bubba Wallace perform a lot better. Because let's be for real, Mike Wheeler was a crew chief for Matty D. They never won in 2019. They never won a race there. And you look back, not to mention when he crew chief for Denny Hamlin in 2017, 2018, before Denny Hamlin went on a tear of Chris Gabehart, Denny Hamlin did not win a single race in 2018, and got eliminated, I believe, in the first round of the playoffs. That's pretty bad, considering Denny Hamlin's a really good driver. The fact that Mike Wheeler got him no wins in 2018 is absolutely terrible. So I think that if I look at who's really at fault for a lot of the issues here at 2311, I think it has to go, in my opinion, there. So Steve Valletta is making one of the first big changes, and I think it's a really good change in my honest opinion. And hopefully Bootie Barker will come in there and help this team overall going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the LA Clash. Now, Steve O'Donnell, executive for NASCAR, was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, and he says that the Clash will be open to all Cup Series teams, and heat races will be likely to help set the field. O'Donnell also said the origins of the event included a trip to Soldier Field. Now, really talking about open invitation for all these teams at this LA Clash. NASCAR is really trying to reinvent this event and make this event a bigger event than it is. And to me, I think especially with this going to the LA Coliseum, why not try to do something different? It's going to be similar to the All-Star Race, of course, where you have an invitational where you can try to qualify in the event. Now, the eligibility right now has not been determined. I would not be surprised if we do see like heat races for the event where we see a bunch of drivers qualify, or there might be already drivers that are locked into the event, perhaps, like drivers that have already won, drivers that have won poles. Because remember, there is no really pole positions here. Yes, you do have 7 races here, where there were, I think, 7 or 8 races here that did have practice qualifying, but I'm really intrigued to see how the eligibility process goes right there. But the fact that we might see heat races for this LA Clash is really, really cool. And it kind of, like I said, it's kind of a throwback going to a stadium. You're going inside a football stadium. And I think it'll be really cool overall to see. Do we going to see some heat races next year? Again, I don't know what the format would look like. Maybe similar to like what they did at Bristol, what they were going to do at Bristol to set the field, where they have like 10 drivers in one heat, 10 drivers in the next heat. Have like 4 heats for like 10 drivers, and then probably have like a major feature. It's like 150 to 200 laps. Probably no maybe live pit stops, have an event outside of the racetrack. So that's what they did at Bowman Gray Stadium. That's how they kind of determined that. But to me, I'm really excited, becoming more and more excited. Again, I wasn't really on board originally with this because, again, of the next-gen car and the traffic concern and stuff. But the more we hear and the more details that do come out about this LA Coliseum event, the more that I continue to be excited and the more I continue to be intrigued about this event. So I'm overall looking more forward to this event. Yes, of course, I'm not really happy for the teams, again, of the travel and all the cost stuff, especially Daytona 500 and the Daytona Speedweeks being legitimately right around the corner. But I think that this event will be bigger than a lot of people realize, and I'm definitely looking forward to it overall for sure. I'm definitely excited, and I'm happy that we're going to see some heats in the LA Clash. I'm definitely looking forward to it for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Starcom Racing, as it was reported by, well, kind of reported by myself on Twitter, but it was reported by Charlie Langenstein, who works at Starcom Racing as a crew member, that they are expected to cease operations at the end of the 2021 season. Now, that post got originally taken down, but he basically reported that he will be leaving the team, and the team has basically informed that they are going to cease operations at the end of the 2021 season. Now, we have basically talked about Starcom Racing is expected to sell their charter to Spire Motorsports a couple weeks ago. This is reported from insiders that said they're expected to sell their charter to Spire Motorsports at the end of this year, and Spire will continue to be a two-car operation going into 2022. Now, the first question is about Spire. Let's talk about Starcom Racing. Starcom Racing is not overall a very good team. I just want to make this really, really clear. I feel for the people working at team, people like Charlie Langenstein and even Derek Cope and them, but their performance has not been great. They sit 38th in the owner's points, and right now in the owner's points, they're getting beat by Kaulig Racing by 33 points, and they have ran a quarter of the races. Yes, they do have a win, and they've been very competitive, but Kaulig Racing has only ran a quarter of the races that Starcom's ran this year, and they have 30 more, almost a full race more points than Starcom Racing in the owner's points right now. Not to mention they're going to be another uncharted team, the 37 team, which they're not going to be back next year. They're probably, because we don't know Ryan Preece is going next year, but they're getting beat by a team. They're 25th in the points. And not to mention, Austin Cindric's, the 33 team, has also ran only like 6 races this year. They're only 12 points behind Starcom Racing right now. So their performance has not been great. And I think a lot of it's due in their part to their personnel moves they've made over the last couple of years. You look at Starcom Racing. When they had Landon Castle in that organization, this team was a team that could have contended for top 30s in the points. They were overall a very solid team. But Starcom Racing, ever since the last few years when they had Quinn Houff in the organization, this team overall, in my honest and sincere opinion, they have overall fallen off as an organization. And to me, I think that at this point, it's like, it is what it is. I'm kind of mixed about it, because again, I think that you're going to have a team like Spire who has shown that they have potential to jump upswing. Look at Corey LaJoie. Corey LaJoie has had top 10 cars the last 2 weeks. He's been showing a lot more speed, especially. And I think Spire has been really, really putting a lot of performance in their cars. And I don't think Starcom has really shown that they are capable of contending overall, in my honest and sincere opinion. So it's unfortunate. Now, what happens to Quinn Houff? First thing, what happens to Quinn Houff? I really don't know. Does he go back to Xfinity? Or does Spire Motorsports pick up the option to put Quinn Houff in the organization? It's really unknown at the moment what's going to happen to Starcom Racing if they're going to skip their charter. What's going to happen to Quinn Houff? Are they going to have a trade where they're going to give Quinn Houff to Spire? It's really unknown at the moment. My other big question is, who does Spire officially pick up next year? Remember, Spire Motorsports is expected to sign a 2-car. I think Ryan Preece would definitely be my choice to go with. I think Ryan Preece is a very solid driver. Not to mention, one thing I don't think I mentioned in the video when I talked about this, Spire Motorsports, the 77 team, took the charter back from the 37 team of JT Doherty Racing at the early portions of this year. So I think one thing that'd be really, really cool to see is that if there's a little bit of repaying, recovering from that, I think that it'd be really cool to see them pick up Ryan Preece, especially since Ryan Preece had it. Now, Ryan Preece did have a little bit of a video come out. Again, he was just showing like a really, really cool video in his truck uniform where he wants to be a little bit more competitive. And I think that Spire Motorsports, while they're not as good as that 37 team of JT Doherty Racing, they're a team that has potential to be as good as them. And I will say, at least for Corey LaJoie standards, I think that team has performed. And I think Ryan Preece absolutely deserves a really good opportunity to go somewhere going forward. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. It is unfortunate Starcom Racing is shutting down. Again, it's another team that's shutting down, especially with the charter system. I mean, there's been a couple teams that have overall been shutting down. You look at teams like Germain Racing last year, Levine Family Racing last year, Go Fast Racing last year. Of course, their charters got bought out. Germain's charter got bought out by 2311 Racing. Levine, basically, I think their charter got bought out by another, I think was Levine that bought out the charter? I don't remember. I think Levine's charter went to Trackhouse, if I remember correctly. And then I believe the last charter overall went to, for Live Fast, took over the Go Fast organization, and basically took everything out there. So it's unfortunate to see the Starcom is shutting down, but honestly, I think that Spire Motors will bring a lot to the table, and it'll be a little bit more competition in the field. And the field will just feel a little bit more competitive going forward, in my honest opinion. So, anyway, that is for today's long NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and support page on the link description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about Starcom Racing shutting down? Are you happy about them shutting down or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other NASCAR stories we discussed here today on the channel? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.